What if I told you that America's most loved president lived a secret life so shocking it would ruin any politician today? We're talking about John F. Kennedy, the guy who won everyone's hearts with his charm. But behind closed doors, he was having secret affairs with women from Hollywood, the White House staff, and even criminals. His wife Jackie knew about every single one. She watched as her husband had business meetings that were actually romantic dates. She smiled for cameras while women half her age were swimming naked in the White House pool with her husband. One affair was so dangerous it almost destroyed the entire Kennedy presidency. But here's the crazy part. One woman he supposedly dated ended up murdered like an execution just blocks from the White House. Her diary was burned by the CIA. Woman claimed she was pregnant with the president's baby. And wait until you hear about the 19-year-old intern who lost her virginity to JFK in Jackie's own bedroom. By the end of this video, you'll understand why these weren't just casual hookups. They were risky moves that could have brought down the most powerful man in the world. We're counting down every woman Kennedy supposedly had an affair with. And number 3 will make you question everything about Camelot. This was the 1960s when newspapers protected politicians. Women had few choices, and being powerful meant getting away with almost anything. Kennedy wasn't just any president. He was young, incredibly handsome, with a magnetic personality that drew people like flies to honey. Jackie wasn't some naive wife living in denial. She was smart and calculating, understanding exactly what her husband was doing. She once wrote that Jack was like her father, someone who loved the chase but got bored after he won. Needing constant proof he was still attractive, why did she stay? Why put up with public embarrassment and private betrayal? The answer might shock you. But first, let's dive into the women who supposedly shared intimate moments with America's most powerful man, Ellen Romick, the woman too dangerous to keep. Let's start with a name most people never heard, but one that sent shockwaves through government. Ellen Romick was a stunning German woman who looked like Elizabeth Taylor. She wasn't just any socialite. She was supposedly a hot call girl with access to Washington's most powerful men, was reportedly going to naked pool parties at the White House in spring 1963. But what made her truly dangerous wasn't her beauty or job. It was her background. She was German, married to a sergeant in the German army, and the FBI thought she might be giving information to foreign spies. The situation became so serious that Robert Kennedy personally stepped in. He had Romick quietly kicked out of the country before she became a national security nightmare. Think about that. The president's own brother had to cover up his affair because it threatened the entire country's safety. But Rome didn't go quietly. She knew secrets that could have destroyed not just JFK, but multiple high-ranking officials. Her sudden disappearance was so suspicious, it caught investigative reporters' attention. But the story was buried so deep, it didn't come out until decades later. Gunilla von Post, the love that almost changed everything. Now we're entering territory that could have literally rewritten history. Gunilla von Post was a Swedish socialite who claimed a 6-year relationship with Kennedy, starting in 1953 when he was engaged to Jackie. But this wasn't just another fling. This apparently ran much deeper. According to von Post's book, their first meeting on the French Riviera was like a romantic movie. She described Kennedy kissing her under moonlight, making his eyes appear bluer than the ocean. But here's the scary detail. This happened just 3 weeks before. Kennedy was supposed to marry Jackie. What makes this explosive is what happened 2 years later. Von Post claims Kennedy actually told his father he wanted to leave Jackie to be with her. Imagine how different history would be if JFK had divorced Jackie for a Swedish socialite. The political damage would have been catastrophic. But Joseph Kennedy Sr. stepped in and crushed those dreams, telling his son such scandal would destroy his political career. And here's proof this relationship was real. Love letters between Kennedy and von Post were sold at auction in 2021, revealing intimate details historians had never seen. One letter shows Kennedy begging von Post to visit, writing about their wonderful time together and how much he missed her. These weren't casual notes. They were desperate pleas of a man torn between love and ambition. Fiddle and Faddle, the White House secretaries. This is where Kennedy's affairs moved from risky to absolutely reckless. Priscilla Ware and Jill Cowan were White House staff members who earned security nicknames Fiddle and Faddle. These weren't code names to protect identities. They were mockeries of their job performance, because everyone knew they weren't there to answer phones or type letters. The most telling detail involves wet hair. Multiple witnesses reported seeing Ware and Cowan at their desks, with soaking wet hair after skinny dipping with the president in the White House pool. Picture that, the leader of the free world, splashing around naked with his secretaries while his wife was in another part of the building. But it gets more outrageous. Ware regularly went with Kennedy on official trips to Berlin, Rome, Ireland, Costa Rica, Mexico, and Nassau. Former Secret Service agents reported she rarely seemed engaged in official duties. Instead, she was basically Kennedy's travel companion, paid for with taxpayer money. What makes this particularly disturbing is how bold it was. These weren't secret affairs in private locations. This was the president showing off his cheating in America's most public building, with staff supposedly working for the American people. And here's the detail showing Kennedy's arrogance. Jackie knew. During a White House tour with a Paris Match reporter, Jackie pointed to Ware's desk and commented in French, acknowledging this was the woman sleeping with her husband. Jackie had to endure this embarrassment in her own home in front of foreign press. Marilyn Monroe, the affair that maybe never happened. Everyone remembers Monroe's sexy happy birthday, Mr. President at Madison Square Garden on May 19, 1962, pure theater. Monroe taking off her fur coat to reveal a skin-tight rhinestone-covered gown, walking up to the microphone with her signature breathy voice. The performance was so sensual, it immediately sparked romance rumors. But here's what most don't know. Kennedy and Monroe had very few opportunities to actually spend time together. Historians who studied their lives found that they may have been in the same place at the same time on only a handful of occasions. The most likely opportunity for an intimate encounter was at Bing Crosby's Palm Springs home on March 24, 1962. Both were reportedly at a party there, and one of Monroe's friends claimed hearing what sounded like Kennedy's voice during a phone call with Monroe that weekend. But think about what this reveals. If Kennedy and Monroe had a relationship, it was probably a one-night stand, blown completely out of proportion by decades of rumors. The idea of a grand romance between America's president and Hollywood's biggest star is appealing. But reality was probably much more ordinary. What makes Monroe's story tragic isn't the supposed affair, it's what happened afterward. Less than 3 months after her birthday performance, Monroe was found dead from drug overdose. Exactly 1 year later, Kennedy was assassinated. The timing has fueled conspiracy theories for decades. Judith Campbell Exner, the mob connection. Now we're reaching affairs that didn't just threaten Kennedy's marriage, they threatened national security. Judith Campbell Exner claimed a relationship with Kennedy lasting several years, but what made her dangerous wasn't intimate knowledge of the president, it was her other relationships. Exner met Kennedy through Frank Sinatra at a concert, which should have been Kennedy's first warning. Sinatra was already known for questionable connections, but Kennedy was so confident in managing multiple relationships, he ignored obvious risks. What Kennedy apparently didn't realize was that Exner was also involved with Sam Giancana, a notorious mafia boss. Think about the implications. The president sharing a mistress with organized crime, the potential for blackmail, leaked secrets, national security breaches was huge. But Exner's claims go further. She says she served as a go-between for Kennedy and Giancana, carrying messages and helping communication between the president and mafia. If true, Kennedy was using his mistress as a messenger for dealing with organized crime while supposedly leading the fight against it. The situation became so serious, FBI surveillance was involved. Edgar Hoover briefed Kennedy about surveillance, forcing the president to end the relationship, not because it was wrong, but because he'd been caught. But here's the detail showing Kennedy's recklessness. Exner claims she became pregnant with his child and had to get an abortion to protect his political career. If true, Kennedy was willing to end a potential life to preserve his public image. Mary Pinchot Meyer, the murder that silenced secrets. We've reached the most disturbing story, not just because of the affair, but because of how it ended. Mary Pinchot Meyer was an artist and socialite who supposedly had a 2-year intimate relationship with Kennedy. But what makes her story terrifying isn't what happened during their affair. It's what happened after Kennedy's assassination. Meyer wasn't just another conquest. She was intelligent, educated, socially prominent, similar to Jackie, but with an adventurous spirit that apparently